Let's now talk about governance issues, specifically for non-governmental, not-for-profit boards. We have already stated that when initially starting up a not-for-profit, there are several things that will have to be required to be filed with the Secretary of State, including the Articles of Incorporation, stating the purpose and intent of the organization. Also should be supplying a copy of the bylaws that basically state how the board will have oversight and how the management of the organization will take place. Other important documents that need to be maintained on an ongoing basis will be, of course, the meeting minutes. Basically, what happens with those is it is the date and time and place of meeting, which board members are present, which ones are absent, and then discussion and any voting that took place is basically notated. Those types of things are very important for an organization to keep. Typically, that is the secretary's duties to maintain those meeting minutes. The organization should also have written policies and procedures, including such things as how their internal controls are in place. Nonprofits have definitely become victims of fraud over time. So it's any type of organization can become a victim of fraud. Regarding the jurisdictional requirements, it may even be required, for example, with the Tennessee Secretary of State, annual filings. Who are the board members? And who is the registered agent for the organization should also be taking place on an annual basis. And again, the folks that are mentioned as the board members on this annual filing report, these are the ones who are responsible for the organization. They are there to provide fiscal guidance, but also oversight of management, oversight of the operations. They're there to set policies. The treasurer is also going to keep up with the funds of the organization, keeping good records and helping the organization maintain their documents regarding banking relationships. In regards to the individual board of directors members, they may carry themselves individually E&O or errors and omissions insurance. But they could also possibly require that the organization provide that on their behalf, and or require indemnification clauses within the Articles of Incorporation and bylaws. Because again, there is liability there as a board of directors member regarding the oversight of the organization. With our board of directors members, they should be attending the regular meetings. They should be reviewing financial statements on a regular basis, whether that's monthly, quarterly, or annually. The more often, the better, of course. They should be getting an organizational update from the management, the daily management folks of the organization. Of course, the board of directors members will be voting on different policies and procedures and things that need to be implemented, even including compensation, increases and initial amounts of managers, and possibly even employees, depending on how many there are at an organization. There should also be an audit committee to be developed. Again, many of these nonprofits should be obtaining an external audit in order to continue their operations. It may even be required by, for example, grantors, possibly banks for certain things, maybe even for regulatory. In regards to how some of the information that is financial and non-financial can come into play, we can actually use our information on an ongoing basis to analyze the performance of the organization against itself, historically speaking, but also against those that are in the same category or class of nonprofits. So there are even benchmarks out there that are available, but also some that are being developed. So think about who all would want to use performance measures, both non-financial and financial. Think of the contributors and the grantors, let alone the board of directors. But the management, all of these people have concerns regarding the operations and the accomplishments of these nonprofits, but also consider oversight bodies. Also the state, also the federal government, also watchdog agencies. Your book does highlight again in certain excerpts of the chapter different website addresses where you can go to get additional information. And again, think of the fact that these financial and operational calculations and statistics can be utilized to figure out whether the organization is performing as well as it should be. Also keep in mind though that of course they do have limitations. Think about how the basis of accounting can affect the results of a number if you're looking at a nonprofit's version of the calculation versus, for example, a comparable for-profit entity's version of the formula. Think of also the fact that management has oversight and therefore influence on the allocation of, for example, types of expenses to program activity areas. Okay, so if they break it down into different program activities, maybe they put a little too much expense to one area and a differing amount to another, and that can change how the performance of a particular service may look. A thing to mention here, some of the financial and operational things that can be calculated, maybe the organization can actually come up with some on their own that they could also utilize. And basically I wanted to bring in here an example organization that I was on the board for at one time, and it was the Lookout Mountain Conservancy. You could go and check out their webpage. It's lookoutmountainconservancy.org. They went through a very rigorous process to receive a certain type of accreditation for land management and conservation organizations. And based on that, they were able to get certification. And when they do that, when these types of nonprofits put that much effort into obtaining these types of things, they basically are able to open the doors for more grants and more contributions. Because again, it gets them recognition. They've gone through a rigorous review process regarding internal controls, efficiency of operations, the policies and procedures have been developed, a well-rounded, very large, diverse board of directors, etc. And that proves to these potential additional grantors and contributors that the institution is being well ran, that the donations are being used very well. And so that's going to make more people want to even give more. Some of the types of things that organizations could come up with on their own to show these donors how well the money is being used is, figure out what exactly the organization is doing and then somehow try to measure it. So for Lookout Mountain Conservancy, they could do miles of new trails established. So biking and hiking trails, miles of new trails established during the year. They could also track miles of existing trails that were cleared or maintained during the year. Lookout Mountain Conservancy has a very great relationship with some of our at-risk youth at Howard High School and Calvin Donaldson Elementary. And they actually have paid internships where they get the students to come out and do all types of conservation projects and work on the trails, and they pay these students, and they track the number of intern hours worked during the year and the number of visiting interns, because they're actually students that come from other areas just to come and see what all goes on at Lookout Mountain Conservancy property. So, what kinds of numbers can be utilized for regulatory and state and federal? That's certain things that have to be filed within the 990 and other documents, but then what kinds of things could an accountant help put together for getting the contributors to contribute more? Those are things that accountants sometimes can bring to the table, thinking of things differently than our more creative individuals, if you will. So hopefully you guys are going to have some opportunities in your future, if you're not already, to work with some nonprofits.